Hello, I'm Dan.
And I'm Simon.
And this is the Wikicast, a podcast where Wikipedia takes us to a random article and we talk about what we find. Simon, what are we talking about this week?
This week, Daniel, I am delighted to say that we are talking about Rubaboo. Rubaboo.
Rubaboo.
Rubaboo. Hey, I'm walking here.
Right.
Rubaboo is a common stew or porridge consumed by, oh good grief, coureurs de bois and voyageurs, French fur traders,
Right.
and Métis people of North America. The dish is traditionally made of peas and or corn with grease, parentheses, bear or pork, and a thickening agent, parentheses, bread or flour, that makes up the base of the stew. I have never heard of this before.
Nor have I, but it sounds quite good.
So it's peas and corn is like sort of your oat equivalent. That's like your the base of it, and then you're thickening it with flour, and you add some fat like grease. Why? Surely that would. Okay.
Well, I suppose it would be sort of like, it's quite common, isn't it? I think in sort of quite extreme northern climes and the cultures that exist in them, where they'll have soup. They'll have soupy, brothy things that will have a lot of grease and fat in them because fat locks in heat. I think it's very common in places like Mongolia, where you'll have soup and there'll be just great hunks of fat just floating in the soup because it keeps you really, really warm.
Because they're so calorie dense. Yeah, that makes sense. The Métis people, so I'm assuming this is pretty far north in North America. They live in Canada's three prairie provinces.
Wow. I don't think of Canada having prairies.
No, you don't. That's true. Apparently the prairie provinces are Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba.
Oh my gosh.
A temperate grassland and shrubland biome within the prairie ecosystem of Canada. Interesting. Yeah, I would never have guessed, but of course, why would, of course, they stop north of the 48th parallel? What's the border between America and Canada? Like, makes sense.
Yeah.
And it is the bit, actually looking at it, there's a helpful diagram on Wikipedia that is like, within North America, there's like a blotch, like a Gorbachev birthmark. It actually looks a bit like a person with a very flat nose that's sort of smeared, crossing, most of it's in the US, but then it crosses the border into two provinces in Canada. But, wow, we're already learning. What is this? What has the podcast become?
This is crazy. This is ridiculous. I didn't come here for knowledge.
Oh, came here for nonsense from two British metrosexuals. It's basically what the Wikicast is.
That is basically what it is, isn't it?
Because what else can I tell you about Rubaboo? I can't even say the word with a straight face. Apparently, the etymology is a blend of the French word roux, the thickener that you'd use in a sauce,
Yes.
and the word for soup in the Algonquin language, abou, such as the Anishinaabe Naboo.
Naboo.
It's spelled exactly the same as in Star Wars as well.
No way.
I wonder if that's where the inspiration came from. Although pemmican can be added to the stew, pemmican being a mixture of tallow, dried meat, and sometimes berries, so I guess a bit like mincemeat. Rubaboo and pemmican remain separate dishes, but are culturally linked close to each other in Métis history. This is one of those ones that every part of this article is a complete surprise. Like, I have very little in a way of any cultural touchstones here to draw on. This is the best kind of article to randomise on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of the best, Daniel, how are you?
Well, I mean, what a lovely, wholesome, hearty
You piece of
segue. You bastard. Look, I'm all right. I'm fine. I'm fine in myself. I think I may have picked up a slight coldy thing from my partner, but it's not very bad, and I imagine it's probably going to be sort of like a 48-hour thing. I sort of feel fine. I'm a bit sort of croaky and sniffy, but otherwise I'm fine. I do, however, I'm about to go into probably one of the most stressful 3 weeks of my academic life so far, in that I have finals next week and the following week, and then the week after that my MSc thesis is due. So there's quite a lot going on.
Yeah, I feel that pain. I'm going through into a very busy period myself. I'm actually in the middle of it, to be fair. The past 6 days I was traveling. I'm here for 4 days, and then I'm in London for a week, and then I'm back home for 2 days, and then I'm in the Netherlands for 4 days, and then I'm back home for 3 days, and then I'm in Oxford for 3 days, and then I'm back for a week, and then I'm in Dublin. Yeah, I know the pain. I don't know. Is this is everybody busy at the moment? Maybe this is just we're going through everyday people problems.
Are you... Okay, now this is going to be interesting on 2 points. Are you in Exeter tonight?
No, I was briefly in Exeter yesterday as part of my travels.
Yesterday, that's it. Because I remember seeing Michael the other day, and he said that you were going to take some photos of the choir or something.
Yes, so I was down literally a sort of 2-hour visit. I was just around to take some pictures of all of the scholars, because there are 13 new scholars this year.
Yeah, it's a big intake this year.
Very, very big. And they're lovely. They were really, really lovely to meet. Yeah, great scholars. So very, very happy to sort of, get in the door with that new intake, because of course I'll be coming back from time to time to do video. And I think in particular I'm meant to be recording the B minor mass that they're doing at Buckfast.
Oh yes, that will be fun.
So yeah, great to touch base with them, and obviously great to see Michael, because that was the first time that I'd seen him since the wedding.
Yeah, of course. Gosh.
Which has been sort of, I'm still reeling from it. I think we had a wonderful video that our videographer sent over of the day. There was a highlights reel and then the actual sort of the full service, and the choir came out really well, I thought, on the recording.
Yeah, I listened to that actually. Well, rather watched the video. It was wonderful.
I was pleasantly surprised, because it's a very difficult thing to mic a choir like that. Yeah, so great stuff. And it's a horrible situation to be in, actually, because I really want to give promotion to the guy that made it, but at the same time, obviously, they post samples of all of their stuff to social media, as does the photographer. So I can't do that, because then obviously people wouldn't see pictures of Pixel Girl depixelated. It's just a bit like, oh, but I want to help, but I can't.
I thought the photography, and indeed the videography, but I mean, having gone through a load of the photos, the photography was extraordinary, really beautiful.
Yes, I think we picked an absolute winner on both fronts, really.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's been me.
And how was your little sojourn onto the continent?
Yeah, well, I've had two since, because we had the honeymoon, which was wonderful. We went through Paris, which we spent a day there. We went to Lyon, where we had 2 days. And I don't know if I've actually mentioned this to you. So we were in Lyon, and like the whole thing with the honeymoon was, Pixel Girl loves to plan. She loves to come up with itineraries for things. And unusually, we were sort of in Lyon, and it was like, right, we know we're going to have dinner, but we have no other plans. So we were sort of just walking around, and we stumbled across a museum that had on the side, Museum of Cinema and Miniatures.
Oh, cool.
Which obviously is like, I'm the middle of that Venn diagram. So, obviously we went in. And what it was a museum of film props and prosthetics and special effect, like physical special effects, which was like, in a kind of way that I probably shouldn't admit in public, kind of like a highlight of the honeymoon for me, because they had the originals of things like prostheses from Lord of the Rings. They had some orc heads there. They had the scene in The Matrix where Neo has the bug burrow into him, like when he's held down on the table and the bug thing goes into his belly button.
Yeah.
They had the prosthetic of Keanu Reeves's torso with all the hydraulics and stuff underneath. They had loads of sort of prop guns and things like Star Trek and Stargate and Total Recall. They had Charlie Chaplin's one of his canes, the idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and most impressively to me, they had one of the original huts from Chicken Run, like one of the chicken coops.
Oh wow!
So I was like in heaven. This thing, and to Pixel Girl's credit, she sort of threw herself into it, and I think she really enjoyed it as well. But yeah, that was like a kind of a highlight, to be honest. And then from there, we went down to Montpellier and Perpignan. And yeah, I should probably tell this story on the pod. So I don't know if you know this, Dan, but French swimming pools have unusual rules. Do you know this?
I see. I've heard things, but go on.
So a thing generally in France is
that can I before are you going to say something about certain times?
No, it's not times.
Okay, all right.
You cannot wear pretty much, as a guy, pretty much anything other than Speedos.
Fine.
And I knew this, and yet I'd forgotten when I was packing for the trip, because I think I had my mind on Barcelona, which is where I knew we'd end up, and I knew there'd be a pool there. But I think it was Montpellier that was just so hot. We got there and we were so hot and bothered, and it was too far to go to the sea, so we just thought, we'll go to a swimming pool for like an hour and cool off. And I arrived, and we first of all found out that you had to also, in this pool, wear a swimming cap. Mm-hmm. It was mandatory. So we had to buy swimming caps. And when they were like, right, how much is it to go in the pool? And they were like, it's free today. And they were like, oh, why? And they went, oh, the till's broken.
Fair enough.
And that happened about 4 or 5 times across all of France. People did not want to take our money for services and goods that we were trying to use. It was like, oh, okay, this explains a few things. But then I got out in my swimming cap, and it was quite warm, so I was just sweating gently, wearing my sort of Hawaiian swimmers, and was about to get in the pool, and the lifeguard comes up and goes, no, you can't wear those. Those are dirty. You have to wear Speedos, or unfortunately you can't get in. And I was like, right, well, I'll just sit here on the side with my book. And I was so nervous about being told off for doing something else wrong that Pixel Girl went in, looked around for me and looked up, and what she saw was a man wearing just Hawaiian shorts and a swimming cap, sweating buckets whilst reading a book nervously by the side of the pool. I could not have looked more like a paedophile if I tried.
Yeah, I bet. Oh my gosh.
I was just... It was like red leader standing by. Oh god!
I love how you had. So you had your swimming cap on.
Yeah.
Did you didn't decide to go the whole hog and just stick a sort of goggles and a snorkel in as well?
I mean, I should have
done.
Hello. I am a swimmer. I'm just by the side of the pool. Oh gosh, that was that was something. I was like, and then it was also like just getting there. Like the buses the trams weren't working, and it was like the phrase cluster is thrown around, but that was a bit of a mess. But yeah, and then from there, we had a lovely time in Montpellier and Perpignan, and then we went to Barcelona and stayed in a very nice hotel. And that's the other thing with Pixel Girl, she loves organising and having itineraries.
Yes.
To the point where our honeymoon was, like a day here, a day here, a day here. It was like interrailing almost.
Yeah.
And then we finally got to Barcelona and spent, it was either 2 or 3 nights in this quite nice hotel, and she was like, oh yeah, maybe we should have just done this the whole time. Like,
Yeah.
This is a lot less stressful.
Well, nice to do that toward the end of it, I suppose.
Yeah, it felt like a reward for sure. And it was
It's like a reward.
It was Hotel 70 in Barcelona. If people would like a recommendation, it was very nice. Had a very nice rooftop pool with a bar. Yeah, and you could see the Sagrada Familia from it. And like that building, going to see the Sagrada Familia just blew me away.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Anybody is going to Barcelona, you just have to go and see it. It's just, you can see pictures and you can comprehend the size of it, but like to actually be in there, and specifically for me, it was being in the bit that's called the bosque, like the forest. It's just staggering. And I actually got I did I actually thought of you at the time because I teared up a little bit looking through the exhibition and museum of how it's going to be finished and what it's going to look like in the process of making it. And I was like, wow, I've never been so emotionally affected by a building before.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Really something. So have you been to Barcelona before?
Yes, yeah, a couple of times.
Oh, when did you go?
Ooh, so I first went the year before, well, the year of me starting university. I did sort of travelling for 3 months with a friend from Australia, and then I went to visit family when they were out there, I think a couple of years ago, on a holiday. I just went in for a couple of days. But yeah, amazing. And I don't know whether, did you do, or have you ever done Parc Güell?
Parc Güell, no.
It's really, really gorgeous. And again, it's sort of all Dali architecture and things, but it's a really lovely public park. And it's amazing. It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah, no, we tried to go there, and then we left the hotel, and immediately it pissed down with rain. Like, it seems to be a feature of Barcelona because it's quite near the mountains and obviously on the coast.
Yeah.
And I think that, combined with the fact that the land is very hot, means that you get this huge amount of convection that takes place, and these thunderstorms that happen quite regularly that are really short and sharp and intense and then dissipate just to get dump all that moisture out of the air. And we were caught under one of those, so we ended up not going to the gardens. Instead, we just had to go to a lovely tapas place instead, which was such a hardship.
I mean, it's a hard life, isn't it?
But the other thing that happened since honeymoon is we have now got a little angel in the house called Susie. And she's a 9-year-old rescue. Well, I say rescue. She basically, her previous owners were moving out of the country, and we adopted off of them. Sure. So she went straight from one loving home to another loving home without sort of the trauma of going into a cage and a shelter and things like that. And she's very skittish, but she's very affectionate when she wants to be.
Sure.
And Pixel Wife and I are completely head over heels in love. I would do anything for this cat. I would go and get her because she is actually a little bit talkative, but I just know that I would piss her off if I did the classic thing of "come over here, Dad wants to love you."
Yeah.
Just make a fuss out of her. She's like, "Oh, just having a nap. Go away."
Gosh, exciting stuff then.
Feels very adult, Dan. Feels very, very adult.
Yeah. Gosh, you're telling me.
But yeah, and then the other trip I had to Europe recently, I was in Belgium for the past 2 days. I was filming at near Maastricht, actually. I was staying in the Netherlands, and then we popped
lovely.
over the border to a cement plant for a video filming about unavoidable carbon emissions with a company that invited me out, which was a very cool experience, actually.
Yeah.
But actually, tell you what, that does lead me on. I wanted to ask you this. So I think about this a lot, and I mentioned this in the car ride to the cement plant the other day, that if you were transported back in time, right, and I'm talking 4,000 years, and let's assume that language is no barrier.
Sure.
What would you do? What would you tell people that would try to accelerate, like, the development of civilization? How would you improve people's lives the most? What do you think is the most important piece of information that you could convey? And I'm assuming you're going to like live there. Like, you are going to be the man in the hut that everybody comes to for advice and to seek knowledge and stuff.
Ooh. I wonder whether... So, like 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, I'm plucking a figure out of thin air. Sort of, early civilization kind of time.
I suppose I would want to, if language was no barrier, try and instill in them the understanding of basic mechanics to make life easier. So not necessarily sort of as basic as kinetic energy, but trying to utilize like hydropower, like introduce them the idea of using like water wheels and things. And I imagine that just something as simple as that, I mean, the knock-on effect that's going to have in terms of development of civilization across the next 4,000 years will just bring us forward probably at least 600 or 700 years earlier, right? Than where we currently are.
I was wondering if you would pick like a legal thing, laying down the concept of like, I mean, what is the most fundamental legal? Because like Hammurabi in the Babylonians sort of had like a code that was like the first time that had happened. But like, how would you even construct a legal system from the ground up?
It's hard. I think what's more important than constructing a legal system for people to understand is an innate understanding of a right and then codifying that in a sort of legal sense, right? So I think actually, even if you did sort of try and introduce basic mechanics and engineering very early on, the effect that's going to have on society in terms of the questions they're asking, the cognitive development that they're going through, I imagine that's probably from a sort of moral, ethical perspective too. There'll be a noticeable change there because people will be asking questions, they'll be more inquisitive, and I think it's probably... would we be a better... See, it's interesting, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you could say that perhaps ethically and morally will be a more advanced, forward-thinking society, but similarly that kind of an attitude of not necessarily brutal efficiency and advancement produced the sort of moral and ethical views of Hitler's Third Reich, which was so efficient that actually it was terrible, and it's the same thought process behind eugenics and other really dubious schools of thought.
Are those not the natural consequences of believing that the rights exist, but then them not being universal, them being dependent on some quality, like your genetics or your birthright or whatever it is?
Yeah. See, I think universal then gets slightly complicated too, doesn't it? Because by introducing something that is aimed to be universal at such an early stage, an earlier stage than has actually happened historically, then I think that may result in an even worse case and a series of events leading to conquest and colonization, and we'll no longer be living in this sort of globalized society, but actually just all under one banner. And from a point of culture and art and music and literally everything that defines a particular group of people from another, aside from the sort of pre-imposed borders that we have, and these are the idea of borders between countries. I mean, I don't think they're nearly as important as actual sort of cultural differences in terms of society and attitudes and things. Then I don't know. It's a funny one though, isn't it? I mean, it would be amazing to think like where would we be? How much more advanced would we be if we introduced some even basic tech to?
Because I think like I thought about this a fair bit, and I think the answer. What I would try and teach them is the concept of replaceable mechanical parts. So like standardizing screws and the idea of a measurement, like the idea of having a set of measurements that everyone agrees on, that this is a meter, this is a second, or whatever it is, and just standardizing stuff. Because as soon as you do that, if something breaks, like it's not, you don't need a craftsman to make a whole new thing from scratch. You can take a part out and replace it.
So basically, what you want is IKEA, but 4,000 years ago.
Yes, exactly. That's what I want. But it doesn't have, because the thing is, we think of that as being a very, like, it's a capitalist thing, right? Like that's the basic of a market economy, that you have. You know, I think a lot of people would hear me say that and think, oh yeah, well that means that suddenly you can have businesses that sell these things and it's going to spur that development. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't. That's just the way that we happen to use it. Like, I feel like that's just the way that you can spur technological development. It's not economic, but it's technological development. Because as soon as, like, as cultures in the sort of, when would it have been? I guess 17th and 18th centuries, when that sort of development took place, that's when. That's sort of when there was a real exponential start to what we'd recognize as modern technologies. But at the same time, like, actually being able to build a machine that, you know, mills screws, or, you know, what's another thing that or Allen keys, you know, having like a universe, like, to use the IKEA analogy, like an Allen key, like, just being able to make something standardized is quite difficult in itself. So maybe I'm being ambitious.
It's an interesting question. So an assessment I had to write a while ago for a law and business module of mine, the prompt we were given was, for all the advantages of globalization, the pandemic has highlighted the drawbacks thereof, basically, and increased the persuasiveness of a more protectionist argument. And it's an interesting thing, because you've got to balance, as you say, capitalist market-based societies with. There was a really good. Hang on, let me try and find it, because there was a really interesting quote. Yeah, okay. So I can't remember well, it wasn't a quote. I think it's something I've written. But I said, global economies must be conscious of not losing their footing on the slippery slope of senseless protectionism under the guise and rebranding of smart reshoring. So the decision to relocalize goods and services, especially in the light of COVID and supply chains, like, as soon as one thing goes wrong, the knock-on effect is enormous, right? So there's this idea of smart reshoring, of taking certain things and interrupting the supply chain, so that if there is something that goes wrong in a place of manufacture, and so let's say in China, and we want the product over here, we can go, well, actually this product is important, we don't need to rely on the supply chain. And there was something that said, yeah, here we go. There is, of course, a perfectly reasonable and understanding source of this smart reshoring, rebrand, supply chains. A globalized world thrives on the simple purpose of trade. Have more for less. And I thought, I remember reading this and I thinking, like, yeah, I hadn't really thought of it at that sort of a basic a level. But that's trade, isn't it? Have more for less.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've got one thing, you've got another, I want that, and I've got loads of this. Let's have a conversation.
Any barriers that you put up to that are you get more. Sorry, you're paying more for goods, with the expense being for the benefit of some other quantity or quality, like the idea of it being from, it's British pork or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
Like and associated things, like, because it's British pork, maybe the protections on the welfare of the animals are going to be higher, whatever it is. Like, there is a financial value that has been put on those other qualities. And in a way, by removing all of those barriers, you are just making it a more free market, which makes sense from a purely economic perspective. It's interesting. So it's interesting that we actually are talking about this now, because I just this morning recorded a video about crypto. And could crypto ever be an eco-friendly investment? And it should be available now on Nebula. It's a Nebula exclusive video for people listening. And I basically come to the conclusion that no, it can't be, because the thing about crypto is that it is a purely it's a purely monetary investment, right? Like, the concept of crypto is something that is abstract. It's commodifying something in a way that is divorced from utility. And so investing in it is only ever a financial investment. And by investing in it, you're doing two things. You're basically not investing in a traditional way, which means that you're not investing in a way that has utility. So if I were to buy shares in a company, if that company was doing something positive, like trying to bring down carbon emissions, let's say that they are rolling out renewable electricity generation, then the investment that I've made has done some good. There is a real life benefit to it, whereas with crypto you don't. But secondly, the whole thing with crypto is you're pushing us towards a purely monetary system where the only thing that matters is the number. And you can't put a price on externalities like carbon emissions or like animal standards or whatever it is, I've done a lot of reading into this recently, and it's something that is very interesting, but I'm painfully aware of how little I know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think certainly I recall just having sort of read through this last bit of the essay that I wrote, it was interesting that by the very nature of the question and the prompt, I think they were asking a fairly binary, and in so doing expecting a fairly binary response. But as we know, in every sense of the world, we're not living in a binary world, are we? It's not we don't have one of two choices. Yeah, what did I say? Yeah, as the wealth of society increases, workers in manual labour reduce and a shift to offices and desks take place. Any attempt to contradict this pattern is akin to likening the secret of success to keeping labourers on the worksite and wresting development entirely. But we do not live in a binary world of two choices, exponentially damaging capitalism and pseudo-conservative communism. A balance must be struck between deglobalizing and sensible protectionism, especially in a world where ecology, sustainability and climate change are far more present and brutal dangers. Even when compared to the horrors of the global pandemic, innovative modern solutions are called for, perhaps even revolutionary, just as globalization was decades and decades ago. But it was really interesting. It makes me want to read, what's the prequel to Homo Deus?
Sapiens,
yeah, I want to read that again.
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about rereading it, but purely because I read it initially. I think I've gotten a lot better recently, for some reason, at reading critically.
Yeah.
And I feel like I read Sapiens to begin with in a very uncritical way. I would like to give it a look. But the problem is there's just so many books. I can't, I don't have time.
This is so true. I mean, I don't know whether have you come across Mariana Mazzucato?
No, I don't think I have.
Mariana Mazzucato was recently interviewed on the Adam Buxton podcast, which is normally a sort of comic podcast, but this one was just generally a really interesting conversation with a fascinating person. And she's a sort of fairly groundbreaking economist, and she's written a new book that I thought that was what was arriving today, amongst some other things, called Mission Economy: A Moonshot Guide to Changing Capitalism. And she spoke about it in this interview, and it sounds absolutely fascinating. And the reason that she wrote this particular book, I mean, she's written a load of them, but she said there's lots of people asking the sort of what could we do better, but nobody is saying how do we actually do it,
Yeah.
And that's the point of this book. And yeah, it sounds amazing. So yes, if you haven't come across Mariana Mazzucato, Mission Economy: A Moonshot Guide to Changing Capitalism, I think will be a really interesting read.
I'll put that a link to that in the show notes. I'll also leave a link to Naomi Klein's This Changes Everything, which is we really need to change our systems because it's really it up, guys, kind of read. But I've just realised now we are getting dangerously close to actually being informative, and in that spirit, I want you to please tell me what your choral piece of the week is and get us out of this section.
And this will be my piece of the week. Drum roll, please. Well, my choral piece of the week, I mentioned it about sort of 2 or 3 minutes before we actually hit sort of record in our sort of pre-recording conversation that we usually have, and it's the Rachmaninoff Vespers. Because chef's kiss. Beautiful piece of work. However, very sad news. The reason it was going to be good as my sort of a good choice for my choral piece of the week is because I was due to be singing it on Saturday. The entire Rach Vespers, and then there's a couple of moments of sort of tenor solo in it, particularly movement 5, which is the Nunc Dimittis, Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace, which has a fairly extraordinary tenor solo sort of throughout and over the top. However, I've just had an email from the administrator saying that the concert has been cancelled.
Oh no!
Due to a COVID outbreak within the Abbey Choir.
This is breaking news on the Wikicast.
This is
people.
breaking
So
hot off the press. Yeah, so clearly there are enough members of the choir that are going to be coming down with COVID that they either won't, there's not going to be enough for choir, but also it's going to be a risk to anybody coming to the concert that they're thinking, look, actually, you know what, it's just better if we don't do it, which is absolutely the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a great shame because I was really looking forward to doing it, although it does give me a bit more time to learn or relearn good, convincing Russian pronunciation.
It's not not a language that comes easily to choral singers because you just don't come across it very often.
Not really, no.
Pretty much the Rachmaninoff, and that's about it, really. And a few other, I suppose there are other people like Chesnikov and a couple of other Russian composers that we do come across. And the other thing I suppose that we should mention in this section is, since we last recorded, God Save the King, the Queen passed away.
Indeed, God Save the King.
And we had a sumptuous treat of music at the funeral. I mean, the chapel choir sort of group chat that we had was sort of giving live commentary over the performance and what we thought of the music that was being performed. I thought it was a fantastic service.
Yeah, me too. I thought the music was staggering. In fact, the most moving part of the service for me, I mean, the choirs, both at Westminster Abbey and St George's Chapel, Windsor, sang beautifully, but it was the bagpipe player in Windsor.
Oh, yeah.
That was the moment where I did sort of have a little cry. Yeah, incredibly powerful. I actually was depping at the Exeter Cathedral the Friday after the Queen had passed, that Thursday. So it was one of the first instances of not only God Save the King being sung at the end of the service, because the structure of evensong changes in a time of mourning for the monarch. It doesn't become evensong anymore. It's choral evening prayer. There's no Magnificat. It's just the Nunc Dimittis. And then we sang a psalm.
Interesting.
That's the same psalm, Levavi Oculos, I will lift up mine eyes. And also, one of the most peculiar changes was in the responses.
Yeah.
The cantored response.
Oh Lord, save the King.
Indeed, instead of Oh Lord, save the Queen. So I was, that was one of the first moments that would have been done. It was very,
I think that what made the succession real for me was thinking about singing the national anthem. Like, because at that point, the first day, it was so kind of, holy good grief, this is a historic moment that we're living through. And then suddenly, what's actually going to change? And it's going to be, the next time I sing the national anthem, it's going to be God Save the King, send him victorious.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. It's not so much the fact that King is now present. It's having to alter the pronouns, which I think was throwing people off.
It's very strange.
But it was amazing. And I went to there was the sort of county service of remembrance for the Queen it was on a Sunday, I think, 2 weeks ago maybe a week ago, at about 3:00. I went the whole hog and was in a full mourning suit. Tails, everything, the whole shebang, which went down, I think, rather well. But that was a beautiful service, and the choir were fantastic. The readings were gorgeous.
In particular, I thought the Macmillan piece was, what was the name? What was the text of it? It was
Oh, I know the one you mean.
I'll find it and put it in the show notes. I'm not going to be able to find this now because I've only just been able to find a proper order of service. Yeah, something from the letter to the Romans. But yeah, the Macmillan was great. There was also some Judith Weir earlier, which was normally Like as the Heart is obviously we get the Howells arrangement, but I thought the Weir one was kind of nice. It was all right. And then the Parry, My Soul There Is a Country. I think all choral scholars around the country was just like, yes!
Yeah.
Like an absolute cast iron banger for the middle of the service. And something which I didn't realise, so we, as part of a group called the St Martin's Consort, would sing most Mondays for tourists who are coming to Exeter as part of our duties for the chapel choir. And one of the pieces we would sing every week was O Taste and See by Ralph Vaughan Williams. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realise that was composed for Queen Elizabeth II's coronation.
Yeah.
And then was sung at her funeral.
Is it Taverner? I was singing there was a memorial service, a full Requiem Mass for the repose of the soul of Queen Elizabeth II at Buckfast Abbey that I was singing at. And we sang the De Rufflet Requiem. And the anthem was, is it Funeral Ecos?
The Funeral Ecos, yeah. That's the tower.
But I forget, it's one of them. It's either Funeral Ecos or the other one that's very similar but slightly altered text. But that was written for the funeral of Princess Diana.
And because famously, the piece that became famous from that funeral was the song for Athene.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was composed for The Funeral, I think it was composed previously. It would be an interesting choice because obviously there's this sort of the fractious history between the Queen and Princess Diana. To have that as at the Queen's memorial service, that would have been an interesting choice.
Yeah, so it was Song for Athene. It is Tavern's best-known work, having been performed by Westminster Abbey Choir, conducted by Martin Neary at the funeral service of Diana, Prince of Wales. It was published in 1997, and obviously Diana passed in 1997.
Oh, okay.
So, commissioned by the BBC, the piece was written in April 1993 by Taverner as a tribute to Athene Hariades, a young half-Greek actress who was a family friend killed in a cycling accident.
That was it. I knew that there was some personal connection.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, amazing piece, and it was very, very powerful.
It's extraordinary. I've heard it in person at a funeral before at Exeter Cathedral, and it was really goosebumps all over type kind of moment. It's so interesting that, as you said actually right at the start about the piper that gave me complete chills, and it's so interesting that the human body can respond to the volume and the majesty of a full choir singing something like Song for Athene, and exactly the same way to a single piper in the silence.
Yeah, I think there's just something so haunting about bagpipes.
Yeah, and specifically, it was him walking away, I thought.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I was singing at a wedding a couple of months ago I think the groom was Scottish, and as they were processing out, there was a piper in full gear. He looked fantastic. I mean, they all did, but the piper particularly was in sort of high Highland dress with the sort of cape that goes up to one of the shoulders, and it was amazing. But he played Highland Cathedral. I don't know if you know that tune.
I don't think I do. There'll be a link in the show notes if I can find one.
It's great. I mean, it's just wonderful. I really enjoy bagpipes. And when Andrew Culver, a friend of mine from university, and myself, we used to go to the Caledonian Society balls and things at university, and we would go in full Highland dress and do the ceilidhs and things, and there'd be a bagpipe player there, and it was done in the nave of Exeter Cathedral, and it's just great. It's wonderful.
I've just realized we are so far into this episode, by the way, Dan. We've got to get a move on.
Yeah, we really do.
We've just been enjoying talking to each other. the metrosexual conversations with Dan and Simon. So we find ourselves, I'm pulling us over the border into Critics' Corner, and I wanted to draw attention to a book that I've been reading that I've been very much enjoying as my contribution, by a guy called Tom Holland, not the Spider-Man actor, and it's called Dominion, and it's about the development and history of Christianity, and it's fascinating.
Oh, cool. I think I've heard about this book.
Yeah, I think it's quite well known. It's I was given it as a present. Apologies if I mentioned this last week. I don't think I did. Sorry, last time, I mean. But yeah, it's basically, I like the book a lot. I do think it's making this is what I meant actually when I was saying about sort of reading more critically. It's basically making the claim that a lot of the modern Western world, it's including and especially atheism and concepts like universal human rights, are actually pretty directly attributable to Christianity. And I feel like it does a fantastic job of giving you the history and the facts of the religion, but what it perhaps doesn't do is provide enough context to really back up that claim. It does not provide much information about what was happening at this time in surrounding areas and in surrounding religions. So it's a very interesting book to read with a critical eye on it, because it's fabulously well written and well researched. I just don't know if I agree with the argument that's being made, but I'd highly recommend it. Highly, especially you. I think you'd really enjoy it.
Interesting.
But I don't have too much else to review. I've been trying to plow through my YouTube Watch Later playlist.
Oh, sure.
Because over a honeymoon, it soared. The inflation, it was nearly the same as the inflation in our actual economy, to about 140 videos in it. And I've now valiantly, despite the fact that it's being added to by about 3 or 4 videos a day, I've managed to bring that down to about 90 something. And over the past week, I've watched approximately 30 hours of YouTube.
Wow, good effort.
But nothing in particular. It's just trying to plow through all of these videos so I can stay up to date.
Yeah.
Been watching a lot of people play Plate Up, I suppose. That's sort of been the big thing.
That's quite hot, isn't it, at the moment?
That and watching Hat Films play Ranch Simulator, which if people haven't watched, you're missing out. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life.
I haven't actually seen any of that.
Oh, Dan, you'd love it. It's vintage Hat Films. It's Shat Block level.
Oh,
This
wow.
is a foundational text
Okay.
of the Hat Films canon.
I'll have to give it a
So
watch.
good because the game is so broken. It's hilariously bad.
Amazing.
Oh, I envy you being able to watch it for the first time. But what have you been watching and reading and enjoying?
I'm still. I haven't been able to do much reading for pleasure, what with revision and finals and things. Although I am currently going through Huxley's Brave New World.
Ah, you mentioned this last time. Yeah.
Which is amazing. I'm still plodding through that just simply because I don't have enough time to pick the wretched thing up. But it's great and amazing, and I absolutely love it. I'm fairly up to date on both House of the Dragon. And
yes, I was meant to try and watch both this and Rings of Power. Yeah, Rings of Power.
Rings of Power. House of the Dragon is fine. Rings of Power, from a point of writing, is fine, but I'm absolutely loving it because I'm a Tolkien lore nerd, and I just love, like, from a point of just visual spectacle, it is beautiful. Like, thanks to this enormous budget, I mean, you get these great sweeping sort of helicopter shots of Numenor, the island of Numenor, and it's just amazing. And I'm really interested to see where it goes. There's moments that are incredibly cringe and just sort of don't make much sense, and the pacing's off, and it's not great, but it makes up for it in the sort of the real sort of plot, you know, of the building of the Great Forge to start making the rings and things, and the discovery of Mithril and where Mithril is supposed to have come from, and it's so cool, and it's massively nerdy.
Because I've not read the Silmarillion, and I think a lot of the criticism I've heard of people watching it is that it is lore agnostic. It sort of deviates and compresses and moves things around. But I don't know that Second Age lore at all, so I don't think I'd notice. Do you know that particular bit of the backstory?
I know bits of it. I haven't actually read the Silmarillion in its entirety, like as a sit-down read, just because I think it's quite a challenging read. But
there are very few who can.
Yeah, I've done enough sort of procrastinating sort of deep dives into wikis and Reddit threads and things to know a fair amount. And yeah, there is, you know, there are some sort of changes. There's a current character in the show at the moment who's just referred to as the Stranger. We don't really know who he is. It's one of those instances where it's sort of like, is it Gandalf? If it is, then that's wrong because he shouldn't be there yet. Is it Sauron? Well, it could be, but we don't really know. Is it one of the blue wizards? We don't know. So it's very up in the air. I think one of the things though, and where I sort of can't tolerate any of being like, oh well, it's not accurate to the lore, are people sort of saying like, well, why are there black elves? And you're just like, for God's sake,
it's a made-up world.
Exactly.
None of this is real.
And it's just so petty and rubbish, and it really makes me feel sick when I read comment threads being like, oh, it's completely ridiculous, and you know, and I don't have any time for that at all. But I'm really enjoying Rings of Power. It's the highlight of my week. When I finish watching an episode, usually on a Friday evening, I then, you know, I have the most amazing hour, and then I feel sad because I've got to wait another week. And if a show can elicit that response in a viewer, then I think they're doing something right, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I really do need to catch up now. I'm everything is starting to calm down a little bit after the madness of recent travel and wedding and things like that. So I'm hoping that maybe we can snatch an evening to watch one of these together. Although it is also Bake Off season now. I've only watched the first episode, but I need to catch up because it is the Great British Bake Off season.
Yeah, I haven't been watching any Bake Off. In fact, I haven't been watching many of the series since Mel and Sue left, if I'm honest.
I do. It's slightly different, but I like it.
Yeah. I like Noel Fielding and Matt Lucas, absolutely. But I don't know, I sort of fell out of favour with it.
Yeah, and it's it's easy to sort of burn out, overbake kind of thing. Yeah, it's not for everyone, and to be honest, like, I'm quite glad that I think is it Matt Lucas that's leaving? They're changing up, I think, the presenting team. Personally, I think that's a good thing, but whatever. Anyway, we need to keep moving, Dan. We're rampage. We dillied and we dallied, and now we're having to rampage through the long grass in order to get to the end. And the next obstacle in our way is Patreon Corner. Top lad.
And we now find ourselves in said corner, which is our opportunity to say an enormous thank you to those who support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/the Wikicast. Without Patreon and without our patron support, we wouldn't be able to pay for our hosting. We wouldn't be able to pay for our glorious editor. We wouldn't be able to plan future sort of meets between Simon and myself so we can film some stuff in person, which is absolutely going to be happening very, very soon as I'm approaching the end of my finals and things.
Yeah, we've got a date in the diary. I'm looking forward to it.
Very exciting. So without further ado, I'd like to say an enormous thank you to those who support at top dog tier. That's a pledge of, is it 5? Is it 4? 5?
It's $5 a month.
$5
it's the same as a coffee every month to keep this on the air.
Yeah.
You take from that what you will.
So an enormous thank you has to go out to Jay Wright, Ben McMurtry, Peter Reed, Codzo, Colin J. Brown, Alistair Fortune, Eve Sharples, Lexi at Front Desk, Hasse Hansen, Henry VII, King of England and of France, Lord of Ireland, Aaron Jorgensen, Naf Larock, Sam Harvey, Andrian with an N, Chan, Ben Caples, Martin Narciso, Christian from the Alps, Amy Bonney, Lexi at Front Desk's boss, and Carl Valdrot. I would also like to say an extra thank you to, I was in Oxford at the weekend and over Thursday and Friday the week before for my partner's master's graduation, and really annoyingly I can't remember the name of the lovely chap who came and said hello. I think it might have been Sam, but it could also be Henry or something, or indeed literally any other name, not those two. But it was really lovely to...
He really narrowed it down.
Yeah, it was lovely to have a chat, and it was really nice that you came and sort of said hello. I love it when that happens. So thanks so much for coming and saying hi.
And by my reckoning, you had 20 names there on the team on top dog level.
Indeed.
We have 21
Whoa.
top cats.
Whoa.
Top cats are, and just take one look at Susie to know that they are the superior household pet. Thank you very much to everyone who's supporting at the top cat level. I would like to thank, let's sort this way for once, Will Jenice Humphreys, Rents Kirk, Lewis Hobden, Simon P, Omar Miranda, Oliver Burkhart, Nathan Flaherty, Layla Medina, Matt Maguire, Princess Andromeda, Jack Easton, Jean-Claude Marais, Isabella Strowski, Izzy, Cece, Nafi Iftikhar, Dame Valerie III, Dan Hanvey. I'm just so used to reading Dan Hanvey and abbreviating it to Danvey. Cole Mansfield, Christopher Betterton, Anna Rifa, and Abu El Ella, the physics boy. Top lad.
So we start our correspondence with an email from Rhiannon titled Cambridge Bumps. Rhiannon writes, Dear Simon and Dan.
Sorry. just tribal, Boo!
Dear Simon and Dan, you said in the last podcast to send anything, so I thought that given I'm about to race my 11th set of bumps in 2 days, I would share with you some of the best clips from our Cox's safety briefing. Simon, I'm going to assume from Oxford you know what bumps, torpid summer 8s are. Dan, I've written you a little explanation at the bottom of the email. I did actually used to do some rowing at school.
Oh, did you?
Or when I was at St Leonard's, there were some events in the pool, and I would cox those, which was quite fun.
I was going to say, I assume you were the coxswain.
Yeah. For your viewing delight, or probably more accurately, a lot of wincing, they are a mix of Oxford and Cambridge. I can say that I know most of the people in the Cambridge videos are okay. I can't speak for the Oxford rowers. And we've got a link to some stuff there.
There's a drive. So I'm looking at the first slide here. We have how not to cox bumps. The first rule: don't row into a stationary crew. So just to give people at home a little bit of backstory, the idea of bumps racing is you have all of your rowing boats, and there are 8 rowers and a coxswain who tells people what to do in each boat. You line them up, and each boat is a certain distance apart from each other. And the idea is you're in a ranking. The top boat is at the head of the river, and the bottom ranked boat is at the bottom of the river. And you progress up that ranking by rowing faster than the boat in front of you, such that you touch the other boat. That you bump them. And if you do so, then you leapfrog them in the rankings for the next race. And there are various different tournaments for this in Oxford and Cambridge. I know it as Torpids and as Summer 8s, whereas Cambridge it's, I don't know, Lala Lupu Land or whatever. And there are variants on it where basically if you bump, then you will always depart from the racing line. In some versions, if you get bumped, you also depart from the racing line, which means that it's actually very challenging. If somebody gets bumped in front of you, there's suddenly a load of water to make up. And you have to, catch up to a boat 3 positions in front of you, which is really tough. And it takes place over a approximately 2 kilometer, I think, track. I may be wrong on that front, but it's a grueling it's a really grueling experience to be part of this. I did torpids once, and it was tough. But the first rule that we have is that you don't row into a stationary crew for, I think, obvious reasons. Can you describe what we're looking at in the video, Dan?
Well, we've got. Oh, hang on, my Safari's crashing. I might have to hand over back to you.
Sure. Well, this is. Oh my God, no! Oh no! Oh, that's awful. Okay, so now what crew is that? Is that? It's the resolution of the video is pretty bad, so I think it might be.
Oh gosh, I've seen it now. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's bad. So we have a crew in front. I wish I could tell you the college, but I can't. It's too low resolution. That unfortunately are misdirected, and they plough straight into the bank of the river, and then a boat that's racing right behind them sees them as an easy target, and they plough straight into the side like a Roman trireme. And all of the oars on the left-hand side just clatter against the heads of people. And then there's another collision with another boat that does exactly the same thing into the second boat. And they're klaxoned. A race is you stop when a klaxon happens, which quite frequently would be somebody falls into the river or there's a blockage. Mm-hmm. That is absolutely a klaxon event. Oh, that was hard to watch. Is there another one? Yeah, we've got more of these. We've got a magic rudder. Oh, I think I can see what's going to happen here. We've got two boats that are going at fair speed, and one of them manages to steer, the other one does not, and torpedoes straight into another boat that's stopped on the side of the river. What's this next one? Oh, another magic rudder. It's very exciting. You can see in these clips, you can hear the excitement.
Oh, gosh. Slide 5 tunnel vision is absolutely brutal.
Right, I'm going to skip immediately ahead to this. Oh my God!
Yeah.
What happened? Give us a description, Dan.
So again, we've got a sort of stationary boat at an angle in the water with its sort of rear end sticking out into the middle of the river, and a secondary boat that's fairly far on the right bank, just powering forward, not taking any prisoners, and well, they lose their front end. The front end of the boat snaps, and sort of in so doing impales two of the rowers on the stationary boat. God, that's brutal. Yeah, wow.
That stationary boat is New College from the colours, and the red boat might be St. Cat's. I'm not sure. Again, these are quite low resolution videos. That I've never seen it snap quite like that before. It's literally like watching competing triremes. It's really something.
Yeah, me.
This must be Cambridge, this last one. Uh-oh. Oh! I'm pretty sure I just saw a blade snap in that last one. That seems to be the same college as the previous one. I've just noticed they're not having... There's one college that apparently is incredibly accident-prone. I'm going to choose to believe that's St. John's, because I don't like St. John's. Nobody likes St. John's. Even people at St. John's.
So all of that glorious footage was sent to us from... Rhiannon, approximately 0.23 Queen Elizabeths. Thank you so much, Rhiannon. That was extraordinary. And I will be watching those back again. There's also a crab. That we have one last video from them, which is a corpus crab with music. So this is Corpus Christi College in Cambridge. And someone is, interestingly, there is a boat where people are rowing in hard hats. And somebody catches a crab, which is to say their blade gets stuck in the water. And in they go. The force of the boat is going so fast. The boat's going so fast that their paddle gets pinned into them, and it forces the rower out of the boat and into the water. Easy.
And somebody has set this to the version. I've just watched it again of the 20th Century Fox titles. Ugh.
Glorious.
Piece of art.
Completely
Love
glorious. That. Chef's kiss all round.
I'll give my compliments to the chef. Oh. And then I would just like to read one quick email just to round off the show today from a certain Matthew Can.
Ah, Professor.
Professor Can, reading, Dear Messrs. Clark and Moore, thank you ever so much for the shout out in your most recent episode. I'm only just catching up on my pods as I've been slightly under the weather recently and listening to my pods while on a treadmill. Someone's following in the footsteps of a Trim Noon. You are most welcome, and it was a complete pleasure to have sung at yours and Pixel Wife's spectacular day. The music was awesome, delivered impeccably by M. Graham, Esquire. May I wish you many years of happy married life, generally getting on each other's nerves. Yours, Professor Can.
Lovely.
Aged, I'm rubbish at formula and maths in general, yet I'm about to enter my 6th decade very soon. Yikes. Oh, thank you, Matt, for messaging in. That's wonderful. Well, thank you again, as we said in the episode. Thank you so much for singing for us. You made a huge contribution, and we really, really do appreciate it. So, I'm glad to hear that we've been making your workouts that little bit worse by having to listen to Dan.
So, Simon, what have we learnt today?
Today, Dan, we learned about Rubaboo.
We have. Oh yeah, of course. I completely forgot about that. we got into like economics and changing the course of the history of civilization.
Human history. Yeah. We went deep. We went really deep today. But we started
tangent
talking about a common stew or porridge consumed by French fur traders and the Métis people of North America. And then, we really went off on one. This is one of the all-time greats for tangents, I think, today.
Amazing. We also, I mentioned my choral piece of the week, the Rachmaninoff Vespers, that I sadly won't be singing on Saturday, but I'm sure I'll be able to sing it again at some point.
And I talked about humankind. We talked about the Rings of Power. There was a lot of talking. If you made it through to the end, congratulations.
Yeah, bravo. So, give yourself a pat on the back or something.
You can print out your Pokédex certificate. Well done.
And that's all for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us on your podcasting service of choice. Join the Discord, and if you'd like to see our faces, check out our YouTube channel, Spongy and Electric.
Thoughts on how you would change the course of human history if you went back in time? Thoughts on House of the Dragon and Rings of Power, and other thoughts on the show can be sent to us at spongyelectric@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Join us again for another tumble down the wiki rabbit hole, and we'll see you next time.
We need to get t-shirts.
We do.
Well, we already did, to be fair.
T-shirts and mugs and jumpers and car stickers and the whole thing. A puzzle. Let's do a Wikicast puzzle, but it's just a yellow square. No, it's not. We don't even have our faces on it. It's just a completely yellow square.
But we remove one